Everybody knows the drill. Let's do questions first, since Ashley has going to be leading today. So, and where's our esteemed guest?
Hi. Hi, Mika, it's Lucy.
Oh, here's you. Ashley, let's make Lucy co-host so she moves up the ladder there. So
she should be. She's already a co-host.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't particularly have any updates because Lucy's going to give us a talk, but you know, if anybody have a questions, put them in the chat. I'll give everybody a minute. But I do want to give an update on how I feel, and I don't know if Judy feels comfortable talking about what's going on with her, as we discussed. I don't know. Judy, it's up to you. No? Okay.
I didn't hear what you said. I just got
oh, no, I said if you're comfortable talking about what's going on with you, then
sure.
Why don't you, let's start with that instead of me saying, because my update is quick.
Did you send the prescription in?
I did.
Okay, and can I take that with everything else I'm doing?
Yes, you can.
Okay, you know me, I want to make sure.
Everybody, so listen to the little bit of a Judy's story. Why don't you say it yourself? I don't want to.
Okay, well, my husband got COVID a week ago, and which was kind of crazy because we're in a pretty remote location and we don't go out a lot, but it's really transmissible. So on Tuesday, Tuesday evening, I started having a lot of postnasal drip and just a sore throat. So I started taking some medication to help that. On Wednesday morning, I woke up with pretty bad sinus inflammation, felt kind of cold. Let's see what else, headachy. Oh, not really headachy. My nose was runny and I had a cough with clear mucus. And then I started having a lot of frogginess. My throat sounded really, really bad. I had a low fever throughout the day, but at bedtime I didn't. And I started feeling that my memory was not quite right. As a matter of fact, it was kind of scary. I had to fill out a form with my address and I just couldn't remember my zip code. I mean, it was just totally, totally blank. So that was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, yesterday. It was pretty much the same, still sneezing, a little less congested.
The first day of symptoms was Tuesday?
Tuesday night.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think you should use Paxlovid at this point. Because it's Friday. So it's been 3 full days. Okay. So I think what we should do is, sorry, everybody, stealing her thunder, but we don't have a full day. So, I think that Paxlovid is effective when somebody's either deteriorating or in the first 48 to 72 hours. Now you're out of that window because it's been more than 72 hours and you're doing better.
Yeah, the only thing I'm finding is that my ears are clogged and I'm foggy.
Yeah, but I mean, so, there's going to be symptoms for probably, okay, well, that takes me to my update. What really helped me to get me off of feeling way better is really starting to exercise. I don't know why I kept dragging. I actually, Jody, I think it's like you. I had a mental fatigue and it was disgusting. I couldn't break through it in a certain way. But
I've been exercising all the way through. I mean,
yeah, so I would be not surprising to me that yours will be a lot shorter than even mine because you did the right thing.
So I can exercise now?
Just don't overdo it. And I would love to hear Ashley's intake on this because she's also went through this. Although Ashley's, I'm sure, had a different variant. So, variant specific differences are pretty real. So you and I probably had same one, although guessing that if I got it in Israel, I probably had BA2. You may have, I think you're 50-50, whether it's BA1 or BA2. So it's Omicron for sure, though. And Ashley had the I'm assuming Delta, right? Time-wise?
It's been a little before that because I got sick in December of 2020.
So even before, right. So you got the first variant, whatever that was back then.
Right, before and I wasn't fully vaccinated yet either because the vaccine had just come out. I was in between shots. So it is a little bit of a different, I think, experience.
Okay.
I may have a different outcome.
All right. And, Joe's taking pretty much everything. And then so this early decision about Paxlovid. I think the aspirin, the only thing, Judy, I didn't take aspirin. I don't even know why. I didn't think of it.
You told me to, okay.
No,
so I'm back on it and doing the vitamin C and everything else. And yeah, I mean, I'm feeling fine. And what's surprising is that my energy level has been fine. And actually, I was in the best moods that I've had in quite some time the last couple of days. So to go figure.
Well, keep the script is there. The weekend is coming. You can go get it. I'm assuming it's 24/7 CVS, right?
No, not quite. No.
Yeah, but they're open on the weekend, right?
Yeah, they're open on the weekend.
Okay, so I don't think it's going to be a problem.
So I should pick it up anyway?
Well, I think if you better, I don't think you need to have it laying around. You know what I'm saying? Because this is not a medication that's everywhere. So, I mean.
All right, I'll see how tomorrow is.
Yeah,
if I'm not, if I go down, then I'll get it.
Everybody getting a free consult, witnessing a free consult here. Okay. I don't see any questions. Quiet crowd today. That's good, I guess. Or I don't know, or it's not so good. I can't read people today. Elise is outside, I thought. So Paxlovid, thanks, Sherry. So this is the main medication, the Pfizer medication, which is a combination of two medications, one antiviral and one medication that suppresses metabolism of antiviral. We talked about this drug. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember exactly when. It's pretty much the most effective FDA-approved treatment for acute COVID that is mild to moderate, but not in a hospital. So it's like when your symptoms are not severe enough. Once they get severe enough, then you may have an issue. New York variant. All right. Benita always ahead of time. I have no clue what you're talking about. If you have a link or something, send me. I apologize. I have been not following the news enough.
Apparently there's some new variant in New York, mostly central New York, that has popped up. And I was just kind of curious, like, do we know yet? Is it too early to figure out? 'Cause it's like some sort of sub-variant of Omicron.
Well, I guess that would be up for me to look it up. By the way, just a reminder, and we'll say about this before we end too. So next Friday from 12 to 5, I think Dr. Frame is here. She can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 12 to 5 that we have a fourth song symposium, fourth or fifth, I can't remember.
It's 1 to 5 and it is the fifth.
Fifth, right. So please sign up. We'll make sure before the end of the day, before the end of the hour, we'll put the link to the sign up in the chat if you haven't signed up yet. It's pretty exciting. We have a lot of things going on. Dr. Gordon's going to be talking. Who else is talking, Lee?
Well, our keynote speaker is Françoise Adnan, who is the outgoing chair for the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health, as well as the Chief Wellbeing Officer for the UC Connor system. And then we have our Chief Wellness Officer, who you all know, Lorenzo Norris, who's going to be speaking as well.
Great. Very, very good. And we'll put the link. I think I'll have to go check on that flyer in a second. But yeah, I think, Elisa, thanks. I think that's a very good point. Let's put anybody who's willing to share how they got it. You can either chat it or you can unmute and say a word or two. I'm cognizant of time. Let's just take a couple more minutes before Lucy goes. Oh, thank you. So link is in there, everybody. So I think what happened with me is this. I traveled when I got it. So it was very stressful. I was on a plane, I flew, I ran out on the fourth day, I ran out of all my supplements. So I also had like 24 hours without supplements on the way home. I just miscalculated. I try to minimalistic. I don't take too many crap with me wherever I travel. Pack lightly always. And so I think that was that, plus the travel, plus, it's also a new variant, most likely. So whatever they had in Israel. And then I think my booster was far out, right? So I was one of the first to get boosters back in the day. So that's been way more than 6 months. So I think it's a combination of all those things combined. All right. I don't see any more. Anybody sees any more questions? Yeah. No, I had quercetin. I had this product Dehist, which I love. Actually, sorry, I probably should not say that, but we're recording this. But anyway, I'm using personally. I'm not. Unless you're my patient. But it's a combination of quercetin, bromelain, stinging nettle, which has for me as an allergic person, it's quite an important supplement, and then some NAC. So, okay, with that, I'm gonna go check what's going on there, and I guess. Thank you, Luci, for being here. Sorry, I muted myself too early.
Thanks, Mika. Okay, so it looks like I'm on. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. You all got an introduction to me in the email, but so I won't say much about my past. There's a little bit of me coming up in the talk. What I wanted to tell you, though, was that I've been working on this presentation that I'm going to be giving to a large conference in Arizona in a couple of weeks, about 500 people. So I thought you would be interested in it as well. And what I'd love is if you would give me feedback after this. I'd love to know what you thought. Couple differences, though, between you and the audience I'll be talking to. First of all, I won't have slides. But second of all, you all are very highly educated in nutrition, and I think probably have more education than the average population. So keep that in mind. I did make a few changes for you all. And my book is called Eat to Lead. So Eat to Lead is a different way of looking at food. And that's what I'd like to chat with you about today, a little bit of a different angle on an approach to food and eating. Okay, so as I describe this person, please let me know if this sounds like you or anyone you know, maybe someone in your family or friends. But this person is working long hours, pushing past their limits, always under high stress, having trouble sleeping, drinking vats of coffee, exhausted all the time, but working through it. And this person may also be feeling sick a little more often or too regularly. Maybe they feel like they're developing some kind of chronic illness, or maybe it's random scary symptoms coming out of nowhere, unrelated to anything in particular. Okay, we have COVID now, but aside from that, does this sound like anyone you know or yourself? You can just chat it or raise your hand. Most of your patients. Yep. Okay, like you in the last week, Vanita. Shirley. Well, this is the story. Nadia, you're retired. Okay, good. Good for you, because you're doing retirement right. A lot of people in retirement don't know how to relax. This is a story of many high-performing professionals after logging in a certain number of years. It's the story of many moms with a lot on their plate. It's even the story of grandparents these days and people who are in retirement but are still doing too much. It was my story too. I was getting those scary symptoms coming out of nowhere. And when I had my experience, it was pretty worrisome to me because I thought that I had health down pretty well. I was a pre-med student in college, and during college, I got certified as an exercise class instructor and a personal trainer. And then while working, I was exercising. I got my Taekwondo black belt, and I was competing in triathlons and other endurance events. And I was keeping up with the food trends. I thought I was being extremely good with my health and eating, but it wasn't good enough. My turning point was one Thanksgiving holiday when I was the managing director of a health club and spa in Washington, D.C. I had the holiday off, which was unusual. And I was very excited to see my family for the first time in a long time. Suitcase in hand, I was walking down the hallway of my apartment, looking forward to the trip. And I thought about how I'd travel on that train and then get into a cab and then a few more trains and spend every night on a different family guest bed. And then I noticed how tired I really was. And I felt like I was coming down with something again. And I did something differently that time. Instead of pushing myself to go, I turned around and went back home, and I canceled my trip. And I was starting to think, what's wrong with me? Because I know family is important, vacation is important, rest is important, having a life is important, but I couldn't do it that year. And so I needed to figure out how to make a change. So eventually I went back to school to get my second bachelor's in nutrition, and that rolled into a master's in exercise physiology with an emphasis on genetics. At that time, science was just starting to discover that our lifestyle and how we eat has an even greater impact on our health than our genes do. And of course, you probably know this. Now there's a whole segment of research dedicated to it. It's called epigenetics. And how we eat is a big part of how our genes express themselves or don't express themselves. And around that time, I also started to observe that the way we're being taught to eat in the media is not for optimal performance. Most of the time, it's not even for health. And when I say media, I mean, of course, news and social media, but I also mean TV, movies, and even books. What we're getting is, at best, little pieces of information, but not the whole picture. And at worst, we're getting misinformation. So has any one of you been on a diet, or are you on one now? You can type it in the chat. I'm just interested. Ever been? I'm sure it's like we've all been on a diet, right? But go ahead and let me know. Nadia, never. Okay, good. You disproved my claim there. Okay, many, yes. No, okay, I've got a few no's. Never been on a diet. I love that. No diet since 1979. Jennifer, wonderful. Okay, well, wonderful. Works well with Weight Watchers. Yeah, they're one of the better ones. Irene, Paleo, Benita, Anna Maria. Yes. Okay. So it was good to hear that some people have not been on a diet. I tried all the diets before I went back to school. And, you know, the news is not helping. All of this information we're getting from random sources is not helping because the US is in a tough time right now. Aside from continually dealing with the COVID pandemic and its ramifications, 74% of the United States right now is overweight or obese. And as you may know, that's a condition associated with the #1 causes of preventable death, including heart disease, diabetes, cancers, and other health issues that are known to cause us to deteriorate basically in the last 10 to 15% of our lives. Research finds that 3 out of every 5 Americans are trying to eat better at any given time, and the US diet industry is worth $70 billion and growing. And yet about 95% of people who go on a diet gain the weight back in about 2 years. So there's obviously something wrong with this picture. Marketing will tell you that the right nutrition will give you a six-pack abs or get you into a bathing suit, and that may or may not be important to you. But what's more important is for everyone to know that proper nutrition leads to optimal brain performance. And nutrition, of course, you guys know, is not for just looks. It can give you a serious edge and a second lease on life. So that's what I want to talk about, not just health, but optimal performance. Let's see, slide here. Our brains use up to 20% of the calories that we use. And if you think about that, that's a lot. Our head is about 10 pounds. And no doubt that's much less than 20% of your body weight. So relatively speaking, the calories that we use when we're thinking and processing a lot are high. We also know that the 5 most energy consuming activities of your brain are understanding information, committing things to memory, recalling things from memory, making decisions, and inhibiting. As you know, that's resisting acting on your first inclination. So if you are leading people in any way or making a lot of decisions all day or being creative all day, you're doing more than one of these activities at any given time and all day. And it's a fact that our brains work best when they're fed and rested. Most of us would never think of going to the gym and working out 10 to 12 hours per day without giving it a little rest and maybe a little food and definitely a little water. But many of us essentially ask that of our brain. And you might be thinking, well, that's because we can feel when our body gets tired, but not so much our brain. However, our brain does give us signs when it's tired. And the signs are things like less creativity, reduced ability to concentrate, brain fog, moodiness, getting angry a little easier, maybe having a little less patience with people, feeling unnecessary sadness or nervousness or insecurity. All of these are ways that our brain tells us it's not being optimal. It needs something. It needs to be rejuvenated. And when our brain loses energy, we are suboptimal until we replenish it. Just like our body, our brain needs rest and breaks and the right food, the kind of food that gives us energy to do what we need to do all day and into the night, and ideally for the long term, for many years to come. So what food? Well, I constantly hear people telling me that nutritionists are confused or the science of food is changing so fast, it's hard to keep up. You guys are talking about it all the time, so no doubt you don't feel that way, but many people do. And what I have to remind them of is that science of nutrition is just like the science of everything else. It's evolving. And so there are fundamentals that we know, and those are the cornerstones upon which we further our investigations. And as we investigate more, we learn more. Science is evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. But marketing will tell you that everything you need to know about nutrition is now wrong and you have to relearn everything. And it says that because it needs to get your eyeballs to the page so people can get paid. Of course, there are some extremely exciting breakthroughs in nutrition science today, all of which comes from the fundamentals that we've already known. So I'll talk about 3 examples of what I think are the most exciting things we know today. The first is that with the right food and lifestyle, we know that our DNA can be up to replicate, gives us the pattern of a younger person. So how much more power and energy and fun can we have with a body and mind that's 15 years younger? It's real. Second is we now know that many symptoms and illnesses that we associated with aging, we thought were normal part of aging, are related to inflammation. And there's a term for it now. It's called inflammaging. And we also know that inflammation can be avoided or kept at bay with the right food and lifestyle choices. So if you're doing things right, the way you age today will not be the same as your grandparents or your parents in a good way. So you can have more life and energy far longer into the future if you want it. And the third is that our gut is fast becoming known as our second brain for many reasons. But one of them is that we found up to 95% of serotonin is made in our gut. You're probably familiar with serotonin. It's the hormone that makes us happy, regulates depression and anxiety, and helps us sleep, among other things. So when we feed our gut what it needs to be healthy, you're feeding yourself to be happier and calmer and get better sleep. All things that are important for your optimal performance and will also help you in your relationships. So when it comes to foods, specific foods that we should be eating, a lot of people want to know that answer, but it's different for everyone, as you might have figured out. And it's not just what to eat. So when I wrote Eat to Lead, I wrote it because we need to know the fundamental science behind food and how it works in the body so we can make the right choices in all different kinds of circumstances. And then we need to do some research on ourselves regarding how much we need to eat, what times we need to eat, and what food makes us feel the best during the day and into the night. And that isn't necessarily the same thing. So when you're first doing research on yourself, it's best to also have some seasoned, knowledgeable guides to help you to navigate through the science and the information, which luckily you all have here. And I also try to provide that in the book because people can, kind of look and see how they are comparing to what the science is saying, and then make some good decisions. So that being said, I'll give you a few overarching examples here, though, about food, some things that you may be familiar with, but some you may not. We know there's no magic pill for diet, but we do have something like it in fruits and vegetables. They're the food groups that have the largest variety and density of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, etc. And these are the substances that preserve your body and your brain and your DNA. And we need to eat as many different kinds as possible in large amounts daily to get the benefits. I know you just talked about that in your last discussion with Lee. But this is a good motivator to do so. And second, we need to be equal opportunity eaters. Every food group provides unique combinations of nutrients that benefit your energy and health. Food groups are things like fruit, vegetables, legumes, fish, meat, dairy, grains, water. And when a fad diet removes a whole food group, it removes some of the critical nutrients you need to be optimal. So we need to eat as much variety as possible so we can get all those beneficial nutrients. Ideally, we're getting them from real foods. I'll mention this in a sec. But as we get these different kinds of foods, we also get different kinds of energy, long and short-term energy from a variety of different foods. And regarding serotonin that we just talked about, our gut microbiome is happiest and most healthy with variety. And finally, when it comes to inflammation, processed foods are most associated with inflammation and damage, and natural foods found closest to the way they grow in nature protect us against inflammation. Nature packages those protective nutrients in ways that make it easiest for us to absorb and benefit from them. So that's why we want to have a large variety in the most natural forms. Natural food is always better than supplements, always, because it not only provides us what we need, but we're just continually finding all the other things that it has inside of it that we hadn't known about before. So we're getting benefits still that we may not know about for years to come. So of course, I tell people, think an apple, an egg, a piece of fish, not a box of something that says made from natural, blah, 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 right? It's not the same. Okay. And then, you know, of course, a little or a lot about what foods to eat. But how about making changes? How about when it comes to putting your knowledge into action? Changes are hard. And that's where many people fail. You know, how many times have you heard or you said, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it? Well, there's psychological research on how leaders lead teams and organizations to lasting change. It's been an important area of research because leaders of businesses are navigating a brand new world after COVID. And leaders need to be better. But the interesting thing here is that there's similarity, a huge similarity between how good leaders lead other people and how we lead ourselves to grow and change. And I think it's fun because we can be our own leader. We can talk to ourselves like someone who would be leading someone else. And at the same time, we could be practicing what we might say to someone else who might need our help. So I'll give a few examples here now about that. One is keep the big why top of mind. The big why in organizations, it's like a mission statement or a vision statement, but basically it's a North Star. It's a benchmark that people use to consistently make decisions that they know are based on the values of the company. And we have a North Star in our lives too. We have our own values. And we need to really be familiar with how our goals and food choices and making changes to our habits in any way are aligned with our values. So when we're not in the mood to stick with those goals, we can bring them into mind. Your big why might be to keep your mind and body strong and vibrant for your family. It could be to be a good example to others, or it could be to be able to enjoy all life has to offer until the very, very end, which you can. So what is your why? You don't have to type it, but just think about it right now. What is your why for being as healthy as possible, as optimal as possible, for making the right choices, both food and otherwise? And then the second example I'll give you is that leaders need to be good listeners. We've done research and found the best leaders listen to what their teams have to say. They also know themselves very well, and they know how to listen to their intuition. So when we're making changes to personal habits, we have to be good listeners to ourselves. Our gut will tell us if the food we're eating is right or wrong, but we have to pay attention to it. And as we become more intentional about listening to what our body is telling us about food, we actually get better at tuning into our gut reactions in other areas of life. It's a good place to start, and it's a good place to practice. And then another example we're finding out now that a hallmark of the cutting edge leaders today is that they're not afraid to admit failures, learn from them, and quickly pivot, make a change, decide on the appropriate next move. When it comes to our own goals, food goals, and other, how many of us fail and then just decide to throw in the towel or make it mean something personal about us? Now think about how much more successful we'd be if we acted like an agile, flexible company. We made a mistake, we just faced it, and we simply just decided on a better plan and moved on. And in line with that, there's a great conversation right now about how leaders need to show compassion and kindness to the people they're working with. And of course, we need to have compassion and kindness for ourselves to help ourselves. I mean, first of all, it's the right thing to do. But second of all, it's how we stay motivated instead of beating ourselves up when we do something wrong, because eventually it makes the whole venture just so much more miserable. And that's why people don't want to go back. They've been miserable on quote unquote diets or trying to make this or that change. And most of it is because of the beating up of themselves they're doing in their heads. So how about that compassion and kindness for oneself? So to come to close, back to my story from the beginning, my work and research and in leadership and in food has brought me to being bold and creative when it comes to getting what I need for my health and still getting my work done. I haven't had serious illnesses in many years, and I'm confident that at this time, my DNA is at least 15 years younger than my chronological age. My food choices have become a critical part of how I get my power and energy and stamina and focus for excellence. You can put a lot of junk into your body. People can do that and keep going. Or we can choose to gain a high performance edge with healthy food habits. And when done right, it'll give us the power and the energy to be a better human and a better leader for ourselves and others along the way. All right, with that, I will say I'm finished, and I'll ask for you to give me any feedback or questions that you might have. I'm going to stop the share. Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Email. Can you drop your email into the chat?
Oh, sure thing.
Thanks.
Some of you guys put your big why in there, and I love it. Jennifer says to maintain health and energy, enough energy to stay curious and keep moving for kids, of course, and grandkids, most of all. That's nice. And what about for yourself? Please keep that in mind. It feels good to feel good. And Irene says, stay healthy to enjoy life, to not become a burden to those who love me, and participate in our changing world. Yeah. We can only be as good for others as we are being to ourselves. I know it sounds a little bit hard to believe, but it's true. We have to really fill up the vessel before we give to others from the vessel. All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, as I said, I'm working on this presentation for a large group. So any comments you might have, otherwise, I'll take them in the chat as well. I know we have some other things to get on to.
Thank you, Luci. This is perfect. And Ashley, we'll take over.
Awesome. I can't spotlight myself for the recording because I'm the host.
Hold on a second. I'll do that. All right, how do I do this?
Go to participants and then press more.
Yep.
There we go. Great. Well, it's so nice to be with everybody today. I'm so glad to be back and to do some mind-body experiences with you. And so I do also have just a couple of slides to share. I promise it won't be too much. So I'm going to do that. Great. So today I want to talk a little bit about the spring and 5-element acupuncture and sort of how we can incorporate some techniques into our life to live more with the season. So, you know, every other living creature on the earth, whether it be an animal or a tree, is living in accordance with nature. And I think human beings are one of the only ones that we sort of have a little bit of resistance against this sometimes. But, you know, if we figure out some ways that we can live in accordance with nature, or some things that we can add into our life, I think that can be really beneficial for our health. And so I have a couple of slides about living in accordance with spring, which is the season we're in now, and also some Qigong for the spring and the wood element, and a meditation associated with spring to share with you today. So in Chinese medicine, if you look at this little cycle here, it's called the generative cycle or the Shang cycle. You see these 5 elements, and the green circle is wood, which is associated with the springtime. The liver and gallbladder is also the organ or meridian associated with the spring. So that's interesting to keep in mind in terms of what we're trying to keep healthy during this season. And the energy of the springtime is much about of an upward energy. So just like a plant, when it's coming up out of the ground, it needs to have a lot of energy to sprout forward through the soil. It's the same thing with us as well. So a lot of times in the spring, you know, you're going to get a lot of that sort of upward energy or rising energy to your head. And sometimes it can be too much, and it can lead to headaches or agitation, frustration. So we do want to find ways that we can sort of move that energy back down and ground ourselves as well. So some resonances with the 5 phases in terms of the liver. So some of these functions that you see here are also some Western medicine functions too. But some things I think that are important to point out is that the liver really governs the smooth movement of qi. And so if you're not familiar with qi, it's, you know, it can be loosely translated as energy or life force. Basically what moves through the meridians when we're talking about acupuncture or Chinese medicine. The liver also stores the blood. And so sometimes menstrual issues can be related to the liver in Chinese medicine. It governs the muscles in the sinews. So that's interesting to keep in mind in terms of how much movement we want to do in the spring. It has to do with strategic planning. So many call the liver the architect of the body from a mental and spiritual function. And a lot of times, you know, this part about opening at the eyes and blooming in the nails, a lot of times when people have disharmony in their liver, you can either see it in the eyes or see it in the nails. And this can be true in Western medicine too, because I'm sure we've all seen people with jaundice and the yellowing in the eyes. So it's relatable as well. And then the rage and anger, like we talked about in the previous slide, those emotions are very much associated with the spring. And I know from a cultural sense, sometimes we think of rage or anger as something negative. And rage and anger can also be something that propels us forward towards possibility, creativity, justice, change. So it's helpful to think of anger as something that can be positive in our lives as well, and how we can use anger to create transition. And that's sort of what the spring does with that upward motion. And then of course the spring, like we've been talking about, the color green, which seems like it makes sense, right? And then the eastward direction. The gallbladder is the sister of the liver. And so it's the decision maker. So it's the foreman if the liver is the architect. It supports digestion. It gives courage and initiative. And it's sort of the inner plan of life. So something I think that's worth mentioning and kind of goes along with our previous talk that Luci did, which was great, is the Chinese body clock. So when you look at this clock, this is where the 2-hour period of time that organ has its most energy, it's going to be the most effective during that time. So if you're talking about eating breakfast, that would be between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. from a Chinese medicine body clock perspective. So there are people who sort of live to this body clock. They try to have a bowel movement every day between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. I think it's great if you can do that. But it's also interesting to look at, you know, which times am I going to have the most energy? That's sort of how I use this body clock, you know, between 3 and 5 p.m. That's when the energy is being restored. It can also be a really good way to look at, you know, where am I struggling? When we're talking about the liver and the gallbladder, the liver specifically is between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. And a lot of patients, at least that I've seen, complain about waking up between the hours of 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. consistently. And so that's really when our bodies detox our blood. It's when we're supposed to be in deep sleep. It's about rest and recovery planning. So I know some people have heard of, you know, going to sleep with a question that you have for yourself or your life, and then waking up and figuring out you have the answer or a plan. So sleeping on it, I guess, is an expression that comes from the liver. So you can kind of use it in either way. You can use it to sort of live your life, or you can use it to see where I may be in a struggle, and maybe there's a disharmony with one of these. So I'm going to do a little spring meditation with some acupressure that we're going to do for ourselves. So I'm going to pick 2 points. 1 point's a liver point and 1 point is a gallbladder point. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 2 points and why you would use them. And then you can rub on them while we're doing the meditation, which is kind of nice. It gives you something to do, especially if meditation is not something that you're super comfortable with. Or you're a beginner at. So the first one, liver 3, that point, and I'm going to get real flexible with my foot here. So if you go in between your big toe and your second toe, and you put your finger in between them and just move it up towards your ankle, you should fall in a little depression or hole here. Some people it's tender on, some people it's not. Today for me it's not, but just notice it. It doesn't make a difference either way. And when you're doing acupressure, it's good to go in little clockwise circles. You don't have to press super hard, just enough pressure, and you know, do it till it feels good. So that's 1 point. And another name for liver 3, which is interesting, is called happy calm, which I think is sort of a fun name. It's a really good point for hypertension, for agitation. If you find yourself getting annoyed easily, it's good for calming the spirit, easing depression, really great for anything stagnation related when we're talking about acupuncture.
Ashley,
yeah.
You got a question asking if people could see your screen or your face more in the center.
Yeah.
I could watch you.
Stop sharing. Then you can see me. Okay. I'll show the foot again. Since it may have been hard. So you just go in between the two and then till you hit a little depression, a little hole. Okay. So that's liver 3. Really good, like I said, for digestive problems, sighing, depression, mood swings, any menstrual problems, any anger. It's really a good grounding point in general. And so the next one is going to be gallbladder 34, which is usually used in conjunction with liver 3. It's a really good combination. And that one is on your leg. So if you go up from the outer aspect of your ankle, so I'll show sit back here. So the prominence here on your ankle, and then you're going to move up with your finger. So you move up this bone, it's called the fibula. And then once you get towards the knee, below it though, you should feel a little head or a bump. That's the head of the fibula. And what you're gonna do once you find that little bump is you're gonna go in front of it just a little bit. You know, they say in acupuncture that you Soon measurements. It's basically the thickness of a thumbnail. So just over a little bit and then down a little bit. This often is pretty tender. So you may find that. And, you know, don't be too worried about having to get the exact location of either one of these points, because our hands are a lot bigger than a needle. So even if, you know, you're not in the exact point, that's totally fine. And so gallbladder 34, when combined with liver 3, is an earth within wood point. So it's really stabilizing for the wood. It moves stagnation. It helps with depression, frustration, irritation, inflexibility and anger. And it's also a great point for anything ligament related as well, which is nice. So while I do this meditation, which, hold on, just fell when I was moving my screen. Here we go. You can rub on those 2 points. Okay. So look at your present life as a blooming flower. Close your eyes and breathe in this image. See a bud that hasn't yet bloomed. Create the most vivid image in your mind. Now work your way down to the soil. What forms the soil for you? Turn your attention to the feelings or experiences coming up. Give them space. Place a hand on your heart. Breathe in, offering compassion and care for whatever grief or hurt shows up. Take your time here. Allow these feelings to express themselves fully. Be aware of how your heart feels. Now ask yourself, what growth have I experienced as a result of these feelings? How have these moments laid the foundation for my growth? Some moments may offer you wisdom, and others may not. That's okay. Sometimes it takes years to find growth in an experience. Sometimes we never find personal growth. But in this moment, right now, which moments of sorrow and hurt have become the beautiful soil that's the foundation of your flower. Transform your pain into life force, the life force that nourishes the flower's roots. Feel this shift. Breathe it in. With each breath, feel that energy strengthen and grow. Work your way back up to the bud with that energy. Focus on the bud. Focus on the petals. What potential beauty lies here? What excites you when you think of this flower blooming? Focus on the possibility of what's to come. Breathe into your heart as you do this, and breathe in the possibility. Breathe in expansively. Allow the energy of these thoughts to fill every part of your heart. Now allow this energy to expand to the tips of your fingers, the top of your head, and the bottom of your feet. Feel this energy embracing you and filling every part of your being. Stay with this feeling for as long as you like. When you're ready, take 3 deep, expansive inhales and 3 deep, expansive exhales. When you're ready, come back to the present and open your eyes. And so we don't have a lot of time left, but I'll just do the one Qigong motion that's associated with the wood in case you guys will find it relevant for you. Because last time I was on, we did the one with the water, which had to do with the winter. So the wood one's very easy. It's very similar to the closing downs that we did before if you were on last time. But you want your legs about shoulder width apart. I'll try to move it back a little bit. Feet pointing forward. If you can have a little bend in your knees, that's great. If you have some knee problems, it's okay if you don't have to do that. You're gonna put your hands out in front of you, palms facing up. As your knees bend, you'll come up and almost like you're creating a little energy ball in front of you. You're gonna come down. Once you get to your hips, you'll move to the side, point your hands down, and then push down. And then your knees would unbend and you would come up. So you take a deep breath in. Energy ball, breathe out to the side and then down. Really moving that energy down. We'll just do it one more time. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for having me today. And I hope you'll be able to incorporate some of this into springtime.
Actually, the wood is a pretty timely, I think it's a very, like I just actually felt a very good shift because it's, the wood is like if you just walk outside, it's blossoming and the juices are flowing. I'm cutting a lot of like invasive species and I can see how much water is coming from the ground through the trees. So, well, thank you. There is a very good question. Of course, Elle never asks not good questions. So can EFT tapping provide the same benefit as acupuncture since it works on pressure point? I'll let Ashley answer that.
Yeah, EFT and tapping is derived from acupuncture. So most of the places you're tapping are acupuncture points. So I do think that acupressure, if done often enough, can have some of the same benefits as acupuncture. However, you'd have to be doing it, a few times a day to, I think, really get as good of a benefit as you would with needles.
And Lucy asked a good question about what was specifically the wood movement for?
The wood movement is for moving that energy down because like we talked about in the springtime, the energy really wants to come up and that can be great for creativity and possibility, but also can cause headaches and agitation. And so when you're starting to feel that headache and agitation or hypertension, it's really good to sort of push that down and ground it into Mother Earth.
Yeah, it's a powerful grounding technique. And, you can do it outside, having your feet on the ground. Generally, Tai Chi and Qigong can be done outside, but you want to be careful. But this is one technique that is wonderful to do outside, especially when it's warm, I think. Well, so we'll see everybody at Song Symposium. Reminder, there's no actual AIMGW event next Friday, just because it's exactly the same time as the Song Symposium. So we'll see you there. I will.